Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and it's time for my review of The Amazing Spider-Man, the 2012 reboot of the Spider-Man franchise. And I have to say first up that this was a film that I was really excited to see until about a month ago, and I don't know if it was seeing the Avengers or if it was just seeing a little bit more of the actual footage of The Amazing Spider-Man. The wind kind of went out of the sails, I guess you could say, on it. But I did go see it. I actually saw it on the 4th of July, and there's just been a number of technical problems that have kept me from doing the review until tonight. But I have to say that when I walked out of the theater, I wasn't impressed by it. But I did want to think about it before I did a review, because there was a lot of stuff that I had to mull over. And one of those things is the fact that it is so soon after the Sam Raimi trilogy, basically. It's only been 10 years since the first installment of that trilogy. It was back in 2002 that we were introduced to Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, and Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and the whole cast of characters, James Franco as Harry Osborn, yada yada yada. So to have to wipe the slate clean after being invested in those three films as recently as 5 years ago, which was when the last installment came out, it's very hard to separate these two for me. So I had to think about how I really felt about this film as opposed to how it compared to the previous trilogy. And really what I have to say is this is a really good film. And it is a film that actually is superior in almost every way to the first of the Sam Raimi trilogy, the original Spider-Man film from 2002. I have to say that this is superior in almost every way. There are two exceptions to that, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this is essentially a retelling of that 2002 film with a different cast, a slightly different story, a little bit of a difference in the origin. Essentially, most of the same characters, at least the core of the Peter Parker household anyway, is the same, but the love interest is different. His adversary is different. So it's different enough to be worth seeing on its own merits, I guess, story-wise. So if you're going to start and you've never seen a Spider-Man film, I'd start with this one, seriously. But it does tell the origin story of Peter Parker, who of course is a very geeky teenager in high school. He's kind of scrawny. In this particular film, he doesn't know his parents very well, but he knows his parents up till I think he's 8 years old. And then his parents disappear, and we flash forward to his high school years, and he learns a secret about his father, and one thing leads to another, and it leads him to meet Curt Connors, who is a doctor who worked with Peter Parker's father on a cross-species genetic enhancement type experiment. I won't get into the details too much, but that particular experiment leads to the creation of the adversary, the villain, the Lizard, who Spider-Man has to fight in this particular film. And of course, through his contact with Dr. Connors, he also is introduced to the genetically mutated spider that bites him and gives him the Spider-Man powers. And of course, then he has to discover how those things can be used and how to use them to his advantage, make a suit and an identity for himself, and discover all that stuff. You've seen all of this before, or essentially another version of it before. So this is nothing new in terms of the story. It's not even new for the Spider-Man story, because a lot of the stuff is the same. It is how it is different that makes this movie better. And without getting too specific, this is, for lack of a better way to describe it, this is the Christopher Nolan Batman Begins compared to the Tim Burton Batman series. That's how I would compare this film to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. The Sam Raimi films were a little more comic booky than The Amazing Spider-Man is. It's a little more grounded in reality, a little more realistic, but yet the character the Spider-Man character and the way he moves and the way he wisecracks and the way he acts is much more true to the comic book than the Raimi version. Andrew Garfield, who plays Peter Parker, is just light years ahead of Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. I'm just going to get that right out. I really like Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. I like the way he treats the character. I like the way he acts when he's Spider-Man. I like the way he looks as Spider-Man. Some people have complained that he's not buff enough to be Spider-Man. Spider-Man was never a buff character. He was wiry, lanky, like a spider, and that's the way Andrew Garfield looks in the Spider-Man suit. The love interest here is played by Emma Stone, and she's not Mary Jane Watson. She is Gwen Stacy, which is also more true to the comic book because Gwen Stacy was the first love interest for Peter Parker. And the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield is much better than the chemistry between Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. So the love story just works naturally. It comes off better on camera. It feels more natural. It's not as awkward as the previous love story. So that's better. The special effects are much better. The CGI used for Spider-Man and the Lizard, obviously there was no Lizard in the original Spider-Man, but the CGI in general, in terms of Spider-Man swinging around and doing his thing over the streets of New York, it's just a lot better. There's a lot more web shooting by this particular Spider-Man, and it's done more in the way that the comics were or the cartoons were. I don't recall Spider-Man using his webs a lot or anywhere near as much as he does in this particular version, in the Raimi versions. So really, like I said, this particular Spider-Man film is better at everything when compared to the Raimi movie, the first Raimi movie. Now, I'm just going to compare those two. I don't want to compare it to the entire trilogy. That's not fair. But the two things that I think that it doesn't do as well as the Raimi Spider-Man film is the suit, which is a minor quibble, but I don't like the suit as much as I do the Raimi version of the suit. The Raimi version of the suit was almost picture perfect right out of the comic books that I grew up with in the 70s. And this particular suit, I guess, is more in line with maybe the Ultimate Spider-Man, which I'm not really as familiar with. Of course, it looks enough like Spider-Man. It's not jarring. It doesn't, it's not like when they went to the black suit for a time, the, what do you call it? I can't think of it. Symbiote suit. It's not like that. It's not that jarring, but he looks like Spider-Man. But I just really, really liked the Raimi Spider-Man version of the suit. Again, that's minor. The other thing, though, is the villain. The Lizard looks good. I like the way he looked. Even though he was obviously CGI, he still looked cool. But the motivation of the character is the one thing that I didn't find convincing. I understand why Kurt Connors becomes the Lizard. I understand his motivation for doing what he did. But when the Lizard makes this, and I don't want to give anything away, that's why I'm trying to do this without spoiling anything, but when the Lizard becomes evil, he makes this grandstanding speech via a recording that Spider-Man finds, and I don't know where it came from. It just, the motivation for the Lizard to be as evil as he is, or he's trying to be, it just comes off as kind of awkward and forced, and that just didn't work. So if the villain would have been stronger, or at least more motivationally solid, I guess, this would have been a really, really spectacular film. It's still really good. Like I said, it is superior to the original 2002 Spider-Man virtually across the board. The only thing that I would say is that works against it is the fact that you've just seen this before. You've just seen it recently, and it's kind of a chore to sit through yet again, the origin of Spider-Man. And that's not this movie's fault, but just in and of itself, it's just too soon after the Raimi versions, and unfortunately that just hurts your enjoyment of it because you know what's going to happen. I think the film would have benefited if it just took what you already knew and then built a new franchise off of it that way. So essentially becoming what they did with the Hulk, where they built off of the Eric Bana Hulk. They didn't tell the whole story again. They just flashed back with Ed Norton instead of Eric Bana, and you got the picture, and they could move forward. If they would have done that with this particular one and made it essentially Spider-Man 4, I think it would have been better paced. It would have felt fresher, and I would have just not had such a flat feeling when I walked out of it. But in and of itself, it is not a bad film at all, and I really enjoyed it. It's just that it's just too soon, so it was kind of underwhelming. So anyway, what would I give it? I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. I know that seems maybe a little harsh compared to the fact that I've just said it's superior in almost every way. But again, that familiarity just works against it, and that's just the way it is. So that's my review of The Amazing Spider-Man from 2012. And as always, feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe. And feel free to watch the other videos here on the Media Assault channel. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and take it easy.